The next piece of bagpipe technique we need to talk about are strikes. So up until this point, we've been talking about decorations on notes that are above the note, in other words, grace notes. And strikes are kind of the yin to that yang. So strikes always occur below the melody note that you're playing. In other words, you're playing a brief lower note while you're playing a melody note. 90% of the time, kind of roughly speaking, a strike is going to separate two notes of a like pitch. In other words, you're splitting up two notes that are the same pitch. You're not using a strike to change notes between the scale. So grace notes, you can change notes or you can break up notes. Strikes, for the most part, you're going to use to break up notes. If you're a bagpiper already, you'll notice one thing that I say that's only sort of true, but by and large, strikes follow a rule of thumb that on the bottom hand, if you play a strike, you're briefly closing the full hand. In other words, you're playing a very brief low G. So from low A, you're closing the whole hand. In that case, it's just one finger, but you're closing the full hand. From B, you're closing your full hand. C, again, entire hand. And then D, entire hand, asterisk. On the top hand, you're not going to close your entire hand. You're just going to close one finger. So a strike on E is just one finger. The strike on F is one finger. The strike on high G, one finger. And the strike on high A, one finger. You'll notice that instead of going directly toward the hole and directly away from the hole, I kind of did a swipe motion. That just tends to be a little bit more natural for the way that the thumb is put together anatomically. If this is comfortable for you, there's no reason not to do it, but I would recommend working towards a swipe motion. It'll make the same noise. The strike scale will look and sound like this. You'll notice that strikes build off of a foundation that we built earlier. So you want to be sure that you're able to get, in the case of the bottom hand, you're able to get from any bottom hand note to low G cleanly and efficiently. C to low G might be a little bit awkward for you initially, but you want to avoid, like B tends to be a real difficult point for a lot of people. You want to avoid any sort of rolling noises. You want a really clean, distinct, straight to low G. Same thing with D. You want to be sure you're getting directly to low G from D and directly back. You're not getting any kind of extra note or crossing noise in there. In case you are wondering, there is a second strike on D, although it's becoming less and less common. This is one of the ways in which kind of bagpipe music is still evolving, still changing. What I talked about where you close the full hand is called the heavy D strike. That's the strike I play as a rule. That's the strike that a lot of players, I would argue probably most players, play as a rule. There is a second strike that you can do on D where instead of closing your full hand, you just close one finger. But again, that is becoming a more obscure piece of technique. I would recommend the heavy strike for almost everybody and in almost every scenario. If you especially like the light D strike, that's not a problem. You won't face any sort of criticism from bagpipers that have any degree of expertise, but for most people, most of the time, the heavy strike is what I would recommend.